What's up, boys and girls? How y'all doing tonight? Hope you all have a nice, wonderful weekend in the works. All of you people in Europe celebrating Labor Day, famous Marxist holiday. I'm just joking. I don't even know. Just talking smack, dude. Tonight we're gonna try something a little different. Tonight we're offering big cash bonuses, straight up Ethereum dollars, baby. I'm gonna pay the atheists, A-F-E-I-S-S. I'm gonna pay them in Ethereum if they can last 10 minutes making an argumentation that doesn't contradict. Now, how that happens, if you don't know, is through the Discord. So I'm going to give you guys the Discord link. And then if you get in the Discord, you can come on the air, which is it's not on the air. I don't know why. I don't know why we say that. You're not going to be on air. So sorry to let you down. You're not on air. So a lot of atheists were talking smack today because of this person's video, which was super low tier. It was literally like Kmart, Walmart bin grade Sargon. And I mean, he had all of Sargon's snark and none of Sargon's charisma, which is to say no charisma at all. Since Sargon doesn't really, I guess Sargon has maybe a little bit of charisma, but even less philosophical competence. And really the thing about this is that it's a disservice to everybody else. I feel sorry for a lot of people that they get a pseudo education. They think that they're learning and being exposed to things on the internet and that they're getting liberated and they're going to be free and they're going to cast off the superstition. And in some cases it could be the case. Let's say you were raised in some crazy cult. Let's say you were raised in some weirdo Pentecostal thing. And you happen to be a bright young lad of some intelligence, and you notice that your family members that were part of this goober sect, right, were acting like a bunch of goober retards. Perhaps then you might have found atheism to be more palatable, more coherent, more rational. But that's the thing, is that just because we see things at a certain point in our lives to be rational and coherent, or we see in some cases people make arguments for a position that appear to be good arguments, it doesn't necessarily mean that there aren't other arguments that we don't know about, or that there aren't better presenters of the opposing position. This is called the fallacy, for example. So if we don't know our fallacies, we need to be aware of this. The fallacy is that if a position is poorly presented, then the opposite must be true. No. Just because something is poorly presented does not mean the opposition is true. And that should be obvious as to why that's the case. But one thing I'm starting to notice, and I've gone about 20 years now of having debates with atheists, is that typically atheism is, at one stage in a person's maybe early intellectual development, they believe it to be this rational, logical thing. And it's a freeing thing. And then if a person goes into education, or if they actually learn philosophy, they realize that actually this is a difficult position to defend. And it's difficult because atheism, as we've seen, hundreds of times over in the Discord, is a position that really boxes you in and limits you. And so a lot of people don't know anything to do with philosophy, anything to do with paradigms, anything to do with epistemology, ethics, metaphysics. They don't know the basics of philosophy, so they don't know when they're like making huge mistakes. And that's true for everyone. We all have to submit to the same laws of logic. We all have to conform our arguments and our critical thinking to the rules of critical thinking. How do we think rightly versus thinking wrongly or poorly? This is where logic comes in. This is where critical thinking comes in. This is about giving a coherent account, a justification for the things that we believe. Now let's give a classic example of this. So we think of, for example, the Matt Dillahunty debate, right? In the Matt Dillahunty debate, and this is a really common move that we see amongst atheists, which is to do this thing where they say, well, I don't have to believe I shouldn't have to believe in anything unless I see empirical proof for that thing. If you can't empirically demonstrate this or that thing, this or that invariant, immaterial, invisible, sky daddy thing, then there's not really any logical reason, any rational reason, any cogent, coherent reason to believe in that thing. And then, as we saw in the Matt Dillahunty debate, which is why he had to call in reinforcements from his big brothers and the people with PhDs, because he performed very poorly in the debate, to help them make the case that he couldn't make, Matt said, well, logic...
This is like a Q&A live, so like once the Q&A starts, you could actually ask questions.
Can we hold on just a second? Hold on, y'all. This is live. Hold up. So we'll be live in just a second. I'll let whoever wants to speak. And as you know, we let you guys have the floor. But I'm doing an intro salvo about atheism. So what we've seen, right, is that Matt will say things like, and I pointed this out in the debate, Matt will say things like, well, you shouldn't believe anything unless you have empirical proof, demonstrable empirical proof for that thing. And what happened in the course of the debate? Well, Matt says, yeah, I believe in invariant, immaterial, undemonstrable things that cannot be proven through sense data. So the requirement for us was to give a justification when we talked about God being that type of a thing, that class of things that are immaterial, invariant, right? Beyond sense data. Matt affirms the very same types of things and then says that they can't be and don't have to be justified. Logic, transcendental categories, those don't have to be justified. Yes, they're immaterial, they're invariant. And that's called ad hoc. So I pointed that out in the debate. Matt didn't even know what David Hume's arguments were, the argumentation that David Hume made against the very positions that he was holding as a more consistent atheist than Matt Dillahunty. And so we see this move all the time, right? We see people doing this thing where they confuse, well, there's multiple mistakes. Or one mistake is thinking that everything is proven in the same way. And a lot of the atheists, right, the sort of the low tier, like 100 IQ atheists that are on Twitter, that are on YouTube, they just hammer this, spit this out, and they think that invective is an argument. Like I saw people were passing around this video of Bill Burr, and it was like, Bill Burr owns Joe Rogan, right? And you watch the video, and the owning was just him saying, do you got a fucking medical degree? Do you got a medical degree? I don't got a fucking medical. Do you got a medical degree? That's why I listed people with a medical degree. So the whole argument is defer to the expert. Now you can bring in expert testimony, and that might attest to the truth or falsity of an argument or position. But that has nothing to do with the truth or falsity of the position itself. You could have 99.9% of all experts in the world holding a position that's false. So it has nothing ultimately to do, although it can attest to, right, the truth or falsity of something in certain cases, depending upon what the case is, right? This is why, for example, in court cases, we bring in experts. Experts come in and give expert testimony, and they give an account for what's probably going on in the case of, Jeffrey Dahmer, right? Was he eating on people? Was he chewing on people? Yes. Why? Well, because we determined as experts that he's just freaking crazy, dude. He's declared mentally insane. And so the experts give their, right, attestation to this. Could an expert be wrong? Well, of course. And that's why we're all subservient to the objective facts, right? Atheists love to talk about objective facts. They talk about it all the time. And it's odd because so many atheists in the academic sphere, in the philosophy sphere, actually don't even believe in the notion of objective facts. This is a hotly contested problem since David Hume in the domain of epistemology. So anybody who's read Sellers, anybody who's read a basic text on epistemology, bonjour, they would know that there's no prima facie simple approach, a naive, empiricism. That doesn't exist anymore. Really, this was surrendered after Quine to become psychologism. So the domain of empiricist, positivist epistemology doesn't even really exist anymore. I mean, there might be some professors that still defend these things, but it's not really a position that's intellectually defensible anymore. So to bring this full circle, the point of all this was to say that what happens is that atheists have this is what the normie atheists aren't aware that at the academic realm, yes, there's a lot of professors that are agnostic, that would say they're atheist, but they also realize that in the domain of philosophy, professional philosophy, academic philosophy, epistemology, it's difficult to prove or defend that position. And a lot of atheists hit, what about Richard Dawkins? Well, a lot of these people don't realize that philosophy has actually largely been surrendered. Again, when we get up to important people like William Van Orman Quine, we get the surrendering of philosophy and epistemology to psychology and psychologism. And so, again, yes, there are philosophers that do epistemology, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of the 17th century argumentation and presuppositions that the typical street normie YouTube channel atheist has, they're not even aware that they're 200-300 years ago. They're debating the stuff that was the hot topic of debate in the days of Baron d'Holbach, right? Voltaire stuff. Okay. Philosophy has progressed since then, and there have been debates and disputes and questions raised, papers written that are crucial key papers that if you don't know about those, you're out of the conversation. You're not a part of the discourse anymore. You're stuck in 400 years ago. And so people think, Richard Dawkins has brought, this high level of academic, biological acumen to this debate. No. He's brought an old 400-year-old question up. And if people actually listen to what we talk about, they would know that we actually share a lot of the atheist criticisms of the classical so-called proofs for God. Yeah, I agree that multiple versions and types of those classical arguments actually aren't valid. And that's because I did study philosophy at the graduate level. So I'm aware of what, the atheist positions are. Anyway, so the point here is just to say that in my estimation, after 20 years of debating with atheists, most of the time, 90 to 95% of the time, it's not a philosophically sophisticated person. It's a person who is uneducated and unfortunately thinks that atheism is the domain of reason and logic. Theism is the domain of dumb, charismatics rolling on the floor and acting like idiots, or some weird cult. And that's all they think's going on here. Right? Well, the world is more complex than that. I'm sorry if you're a 17-year-old atheist and that's how you think the world is. It's not really like that. I hate to break it to you, but as you get older, you will learn that there's a lot more complexity and nuance to the world and to these questions. And so when you do, if you do, study philosophy, you will be challenged. And this is one of the great things about philosophy is that contrary to most atheists, we actually want the position to be challenged. We want to hear the other side's argumentation. And what we always promote, in the words of Dr. Greg Bahnsen, you ought to be able to state the opponent's position to their satisfaction in order to engage and refute that position. Okay? That's the honorable, right, approach to epistemology and debate. That's having integrity, because I want to know that position as insofar as the opponent is presenting it. And when you do that, what that does is that actually avoids a lot of the drama and the name calling and the emotions that get involved. And unfortunately, right, unless it's a handful of the atheists that we have debated who've been, I don't think that Matt argued well, but I think that Matt didn't lose his temper. It didn't turn into a name calling thing, right? Dr. Malpass didn't lose his temper. It didn't turn into name calling. Dr. Feinberg, right, didn't lose his temper. Feingold, excuse me. It didn't turn into name calling. So that's the difference between, the 17-year-old, 18-year-old immature atheist who is just deluded with pre-lest, thinks he knows everything, versus even, a professor who might be committed to his atheism, but knows that the state of the question in academia and in discourse is such that atheism is not this rational, logical position that is just sort of assumed to be easily defensible. And that's why we oftentimes refer to David Hume, because David Hume is the atheist that we love. Why do we love an atheist? I thought we don't like atheists. No. We love atheist David Hume because he is the preeminent, consistent atheist. And we marshal David Hume against the Thomists as much as we do against the atheist. So actually, if people were aware of this, they might actually be intrigued. They're like, wait a minute. So these guys aren't just presenting the classical proofs, which are bad arguments. They're actually giving a more nuanced, refined, super strong logical argument. I believe that when you understand the transcendental argument, that's what it is. It's foolproof. It's solid. It's nuclear strength apologetics, as Bonson would always say. So atheism has this tendency to box itself in, not be aware of the state of the question, not be aware, even in secular academia, how they don't really hold that you can give a defense and account for things like logic and numbers. They're just reduced, right? It's mostly reductionist. It's mostly just token symbolism. Or even something even more absurd, social construct, right? That's what this guy that made this terrible satire video, this knockoff Sargon guy, said, that logic and words don't have meaning. Oh, thank you. Right. This is the JF argument presented all over again, right? Then your arguments aren't true and they don't have meaning. So you just refuted yourself. Like, imagine the pride of an atheist thinking that he's being clever and getting one over on all these stupid Christians. And then his video literally undercuts what he's doing in the video. And yeah, I know that it's satire and he was trying to be funny, but the point is that it's still attempting to make a logical case using satire to show that the other person's position is silly, it's stupid, it's not a good argument. He says the transcendental argument is that we have uncertainty, therefore God. What? I mean, I've never even heard the worst version of the transcendental argument presented that way. That doesn't even make sense. Uncertainty, therefore God. That's not what the argument is. I mean, and so it would really benefit people to at least just understand a basic form of a transcendental argument. X is the necessary condition of Y. Y, therefore X. And it helps to have, basic, knowledge of things like justification, right? Things like what it means to have explanatory power, what it means to, talk about universals, what it means to talk about invariance, what it means to talk about grounding, giving an account for, right? This is just reasons for belief. That's all we're talking about here. So let me see. I did have the Discord link. I'm going to share that for the chat in case there are people in the chat that want to join. I thought I shared it. No, I didn't share it. Okay, so let me share the Discord link. I think we got a few people in the chat hopping to come on, so we'll let them come on. Let's see here. But I know a lot of people probably just joined in the YouTube chat, so I will give you guys the Discord link as well. And I don't know if we have mods present. I think we do. Maybe. So maybe there's a mod that can vet people. Because we do have a pretty strict vetting process, which actually works really good for us. So there's the band hammer and there's the Jan hammer, right? Talking about some Miami Vice theme song classics in this chat. So there's the Discord link. If you come in, you'll have to check, right, the thingamajiggy, whatever, and then you can be vetted. You do have to answer a couple of questions because that keeps the slow boys out. That keeps the trads out. So let's see what the Roman Catholics said. Oh, so check this out. So we invited a Roman Catholic to debate. He's talking smack all day. Bunini the Chad, and he says, prove that you've had a council that's authoritative after the seventh council. So I invited him to debate, and here's what he says. He says, cheers, boss, but after watching you debate Eric Ibarra, I almost contracted every disease under the sun hearing you talk. So he thought that was funny. Besides, I'm under the age of 16, so I suggest stop messaging me. So this is, you see that how the Roman Catholics act just like the atheists? I mean, this person follows me. I don't follow them, right? So that's what we get here in terms of atheism, Roman Catholics, brothers in arms. Because they all act the same way. And by the way, I think all of these atheists that were sort of losing it today on Twitter and on that stupid video's comments, I think they're all probably like 16, right? And that's what David thinks. David was like, these are all just a bunch of 17-year-olds. They don't know anything. So, yeah, I mean, it was, we had a guy in here a couple days ago who was in some kind of weird sect. I don't remember what it was called, Hyperianism, and he was like, I can reconcile all of mathematics and physics to classical metaphysics, and that's why I accept this position. And I said, after a few questions, it was evident that he didn't know anything about metaphysics at all, much less classic metaphysics or medieval metaphysics. And I said, how are you going to reconcile all of physics with classical metaphysics if you don't know anything about classical metaphysics? And he said, because I read the Hyperianism manifesto or whatever it was. And I'm like, so people are getting cheated, right? That's why what we've done for the last 5 years is ground people in the classical philosophical tradition, classical pedagogy. So many lectures through Plato, Aristotle, so many lectures on metaphysics, logos, right? Things that modern philosophy has abandoned. And that's the point with the atheists that I'm making, which is that atheism has surrendered the domain of logic. And that's why the top atheists, the pop atheists, they will pretty consistently say philosophy is useless. We don't study philosophy anymore. The guy who wanted a debate today, Conspiracy Cats, okay, he's like, debate me. And I'm like, let's do it. And he's like, my channel or your channel? And I'm like, well, hold on there, bro. Let's find out who you are first. Do you have any training in these topics? No, I have no degree in this, but you will debate me. And I'm like, no, I will debate you based on whether you have training in this domain, in this field, whether you have a degree in this field, or, and this is what most people don't do that we do, I'm going to give you the exclusion clause that even if you don't have a degree or training in this field, if you demonstrate to me the requisite knowledge of the field of philosophy or epistemology or metaphysics, I will debate you. And he says, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to show you that I have any knowledge in these fields. I was like, look, I'm going to make it easy for you. Just tell me what one word concept in philosophy, in transcendental argumentation means, and we can set up a debate. No, I don't have to do that. I can't do that. Debate me. And I said, well, no, I'm not going to debate you. You have no degree. You have no training in the field. You said in your tweets, don't waste your time with philosophy. It's worthless. But you want to come and debate logic and transcendental argumentation, which you think is worthless, which you also admit you don't know anything about. So why would I debate? Why would I enter into a debate with a person with no training in the field? This is just so delusional. This is the delusion of atheism that they don't even know that their discipline has surrendered logic for the most part. It's not a question they even care about, because guess what? In case you don't know, logic, reason, those are in the domain of philosophy. Those aren't science. Logic and epistemology, even these people say, is not science. That's over in the philosophy department. You're in the go to a university, dum-dums, which I don't think any of these people have even gotten a BA, right? When you're in the philosophy department and you ask those kinds of questions, they will say, go to the biology department. That's the science department. When you go to the science department and you ask questions about logic and reason, do you know where they send you? That's the other building over there on campus called the philosophy or arts department. So I feel sorry for you people that go on to, I mean, just reading through the comments of these atheist videos is sad, because these people literally think that reasoning is owning people in a video, or what T-Dump does in a debate where he just acts like a complete spurg. They think that's owning people or presenting an argument. They think that when you use basic terms from the domain of epistemology that it's word salad. They literally think that the common terms in a academic discipline are word salad. And so if you're dealing with people at that level of ignorance and foolishness, it's really a sad state of affairs. And all I can say is that I'm sorry for you guys, not you guys in our audience, but the people that are in the atheist sphere that feel that they're getting an education through YouTube videos and through their public education. You guys have been cheated, and I feel sorry for you. It's you that got cheated. And so invective, shit jokes, dumb jokes that aren't even funny, how evil you think I am, the flaws of my character, like none of those things prove or disprove anything. And the jokes aren't even, like, you guys aren't even funny. You're literally doing stuff that Sargon was doing 7 years ago. And even Sargon's shit wasn't that funny. And this guy's like a knockoff of a knockoff. There was like another dude after Sargon who did the same stuff. Right? So, look, and I know that I don't mind that if somebody makes the funny videos. There's a million of those making fun of what we do and what we talk about. I don't care. Okay, so here we have this other goober. It's this evangelical goober. I don't know why this person is obsessed with me. He thinks that I send people to his chat. I don't even know who this dude is, other than when he came on my chat and said, let's debate. And I said, okay, you can come on. And then he says, no, I have a show tonight. I'm not coming on your show right now. Okay, well, when you come and you say let's debate when I'm live, I think you mean let's debate now. That's what I thought you meant. Okay, so I kind of think this dude is crazy. Okay, so I'm not afraid of, see, this is what these delusional people do, is that when you see them act crazy and weird and you like back away, oh, you're scared. You're scared of me, dude. I got him. He's scared. We have organized countless debates with public figures, with PhD people, with top atheists, top Muslims. We're not scared of randos, bro. So, again, don't you see from my vantage point the logic of this? Why would I give a platform to people with 2,000, 5,000, even 50,000 subs when you don't have any knowledge of the topic? So, most people who do public debates, they won't even interact with you, right? But guess what? I still will. But you get the B team. You're not on the A team of debate just because you think you're awesome or you're super smart or whatever, because you're a 20-year-old atheist. You're on the B team or the C team. You might get to the A team, but to get to A team, you need to show your goods, right? Like, imagine coming to an NBA game and being like, I played 20 pickup games before I got here last month. You better let me onto this court right now. I demand it. Or else, Kobe, if you don't let me on the court, Colby Bryant, if you don't let me on the court, you're scared. Right. So this is just such bitchy tact, like just lame, basic bitch tactics. Dude, we're not scared. I'll debate Colby Bryant. Like, at what point are you not? What point is it evident that you're not scared of someone? Like, and by the way, do you notice how most of the people who act like this, like they just sort of sprig out and lose it, like you must have a debate with me. You owe me a debate. And then when they come on, how many times have we seen this? There've been like 5 people that we allowed on, and they have a meltdown, dude. So that's what happens when you let a C team tryout person onto the A team. They just melt down, dude. So this Jeff dude, yeah, exactly. If Colby Bryant is the black mamba, we the white mamba. The white boy mamba over here with my white boy whiteboard. And you know, if we're going to break out the white boy whiteboard, it's about to get real up in here. Anyway, old Colby Bryant, and there's going to be dummies that are going to comment correcting me calling him Colby Bryant, when literally for years we always pronounce names wrong. They don't even realize we're being stupid. So, by the way, I was always a fan of Colby Bryant. I'm not making fun of Colby Bryant. Colby Bryant is the cousin of Kobe Bryant, and he's more famous than Kobe in China. So a lot of people don't know that, but Colby Bryant, who's actually named after the beef of the famous bulls in China, the Colby Bulls of China. I don't know if you guys know this, but that's my favorite basketball player. He's an A-list Chinese team. He plays for the Reds. Get it? The red team because of communism. Get it? He played for the red team, and he's my favorite basketball player. But he's better than Kobe, who you're probably thinking of from the American squad from Team America. So Colby Bryant is, I love to troll people because they don't actually know about Colby Bryant. And then they try to correct you. And they're like, it's Kobe, idiot. And I'm like, oh, really? You must be thinking of the American star and not his cousin, the Chinese star. So, anyway, we're way off topic here. What are we talking about? Atheism. Forgot where I was going, but yeah. So tonight, let's see if we can get an atheist to come on here. It doesn't have to be, by the way. That I like how that kid thought he was owning me by like, I'm 16, by the way. Like, dude, you texted me back and you followed me, so good job with that, dude. What is wrong with people? People are losing their minds out here, right? And look, philosophy, critical thinking helps us not to lose our minds, right? You would think the atheists would be leaping to come on here and I mean, what we believe is so dumb and so stupid, and the transcendental argument is so dumb, right? It's what is it? It's uncertainty, therefore God real. Well, wouldn't it be so easy to like hop on here and just destroy our arguments? And how come the top atheist debaters didn't do that? Oh, that's right. They kind of got a little nervous and squished, didn't they? Yeah, exactly. So people are like, why do you always offer debates? That's what we do. We offer anybody to come on. Here's the thing. And yeah, yes, I will give you $100. If we can find an atheist tonight who can do at least 10 minutes of argumentation without contradicting, I'll give you $100 of Ethereum. Yes, I'll send you whatever you want. It doesn't have to be Ethereum, but that's easy, I guess. That's funny too, because I'll send you $100 of Ethereum and $80 will be a gas fee. You'll get like $20. No, we can make it whatever coin you want. I'll send you whatever shit coin you want. You can get, what do the atheists want? They probably want cum rocket, don't they? That's the number one atheist coin, that degenerate coin. I'm not joking, by the way. That's probably what they want. Anyway, so if an atheist can make 10 minutes of solid argumentation, I'll set a timer. I'll let him talk. And as you guys know, what we do, No, I'm not sending nobody no Solana. You don't get $100 of Solana. Not tonight. You get some Coom Rocket. You get $100 of Coom Rocket, so you can go spend it the rest of your lonely night as you're going to spend it tonight on Upron or whatever else. And it doesn't have to be atheists. I don't know who's in the Discord tonight. By the way, we have 7,000. We did have 8,000. We're at 7,600, and we pruned it. So we finally did prune a bunch of the stupid profiles out of there that weren't active. So we are at 7,000 in the Discord. So it is a lively, active community. We have a lot of Orthodox philosophers, a lot of clergy, a lot of people with degrees, many people with PhDs, MAs, etc. So it is not a haven of dum-dums. It is a high IQ hangout. And I think everybody that's been there for the last few years knows this. And I'm really honored. I'm so thankful to the mods. We have a great mod team. We have just the highest tier. I'm talking about the smartest dudes in there, man. I'm blown away at all the smart people in the Discord. And by the way, we are producing clergy now, thank God. We have people from our Discord who are becoming clergy. So you'll know them by their fruits. And let's see. Do we have anybody? Let's go to the Discord. So if you want to come on, we had a lot of hot air exchange, a lot of butts talking on the internet, talking out of their butts. Will we get an atheist who can come on and make a sustained 10-minute argument without contradicting? I don't think so, but we will leave that open. And it has to be qualifications. You have to be a real atheist. You can't be an Orthodox person who's going to argue atheism to get $100 worth of Ethereum or whatever. You got to be a real atheist. So, but let's open it up. Do we have anybody in our beloved Discord voice chat right now who's ready to demolish the Christians, bro? Demolish the Christians. I just demolished the Christians, bro. Meet me in World of Warcraft later for an after party. Do we have any?
Hi.
What's up, dude?
So I'm not so much into demolishing and such, but I am an atheist, and I came across your video recently from a friend, and I found it quite interesting, and I thought...
Which video?
I was wondering if I could just... let me see. It was one to do with the transcendental argument. It was your debate review of Jordan Peterson and Matt Dillahunty.
Okay.
Anyway, and then I just went and looked a little bit further, and I found some of your argumentation interesting.
Okay.
I had a question regarding epistemology of perception. Are you at all familiar with like the neo-realist tradition, or the more direct realist tradition along the lines of like William James and such, and how they would consider things like logic and stuff within the structure of reality and more functional and a process and not an immaterial entity? And do you have a response to that?
Yes, I am. So I think the problem with this position is that it doesn't account for the things that we need and expect and actually see logic, words, meaning, concepts, math doing, right? So, for example, I don't see how something that's an immaterial invariant thing could be a process. And so if it's not itself a process, or if it's not a social construct, or if it's not itself identical to matter, then what is it? And once we try to identify or reduce any of these things to matter, or when we don't want to give an account for immaterial invariant objects, or we want to say that the mind is identical to matter, we're actually placing ourselves in impossible positions. And so you're welcome to make argumentation along those lines if you want to.
Okay, so what if we conceived of first of all, I don't believe in immaterial things, so I'd try and conceive of everything materially because that's more parsimonious. But say if we had a sort of definition of mind along the lines of a set of interrelationships between material things, and then we consider things like logic, because obviously I wouldn't say logic's immaterial, I would say it's a material thing, but it's not an entity, right? Because an entity, there's no like entity, like you couldn't cut open a brain or any sort of reasoning being and find an entity of logic, right? I think we both agree on that. But, if you considered things like logic and like experience and all these things that you would label as immaterial, instead of as immaterial entities that exist in some sort of universal category, instead they were just relationships between material entities, or like complex sets of interrelationships between material things. And then you could kind of conceive of it that way. What would you respond to that?
Yeah. So my question would be, and as I was listening to you talk, I wrote down 3 things that I would like you to clarify, if you would. So when you talk about a set of things, and when you talk about relationships, and when you talk about complex sets, when you talk about the things, I assume you mean when you pick out objects in the world, what is the set that classes those set of things?
Okay, well, I guess it would depend on what we're talking about. So let's.
Well, I'm asking you because this is what you said.
Experience, as an example.
Well, I mean, so you said thing. Like, hold on.
Oh, sorry,
so, are you talking about objects in the world? That's what I assume you mean by things. You said relationships between those things in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what is this thing that you're calling a set of those things?
What is this thing that I'm calling a set of things?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, it's a set of relationships, as in like. Okay, because I guess what you're trying to say is you're trying to say. Okay,
so the set is the hold on. So the set is is the relationship.
Sorry?
Is that what you're saying? The set is identical to the relationship?
Well, no, because like you could have a bunch of individual relationships, and then a set of them is just a collection of relationships.
Okay, so when we talk about a series of objects, right, that we're calling a coconut or whatever, you're saying that is a set of 7 coconuts, right? There's 7 of these things, and that set we're calling coconuts, right?
Kind of. I guess like so for example, if you're looking at numbers and you wanted to find an empirical example of numbers, you could find 7 coconuts and then see the relationship between them of 7 different entities.
Okay, so hold on. So you said the set. So the set is identical to the relationship now, in this case, in this example.
I'm not sure I fully understand what you mean, but what I'm hearing,
you said, I thought that's what you said. The set here, in the case of the coconuts, is the relationship between the coconuts, and there's 7 of them.
Right, that would be one set of relationships, sure, yeah.
Okay, so 7 is identical to the material components that make up the 7 coconuts?
Identical is not exactly the word I'd use. I would say that's sort of like an instantiation of that relationship.
Oh, so there's a distinction between the set and the individuals, such that the set is instantiated.
Well, in the sense, like, yes, because there's like an individual example of it, and then you could find that example elsewhere. I don't think there's like
what is instantiated. Because you said you're a materialist.
Mm-hmm.
So there's not actually anything instantiated. I mean, in your mind, you might perceive an instantiation. But in the world, there's nothing instantiated.
Right, okay. So I'm probably not going to be using, like, I'm only in, like, my bachelor's degree level of education, so my use of terminology might not be perfect, so I apologize for that. But in terms of, like, I would consider these sort of relationships to be found within the structure of reality, within the structure of material reality, without a necessity for immaterial reality, in the sense that, you can find empirical examples of these different, like,
so
logical categories.
What is instantiated?
What is instantiate?
Mm-hmm. No, what is instantiated in the 7 coconuts?
The relationship of 7.
Okay, so the set is the relationship.
Sure.
So what's instantiated is identical to the objects there.
It's found within that structure, yeah.
Okay. Where in those molecules do you find 7?
So it's not the thing is, it's not an entity, right? You're not finding like an entity example.
Okay, so instantiated, you said instantiated. That's a metaphysical term. You said it's in the objects themselves. What is
in the relationship between the objects?
Okay. But
not in, like, it's not an entity, it's a relationship.
Okay. So you're saying that the set is identical to the relationship between the objects.
not quite.
Okay, but that's what you said, and then you said it was instantiated. So I'm asking you, what's instantiated when what's in front of us is molecules?
Right. So the difference is like, and maybe I'm not wording it.
So
well,
you think look? Let me ask it this way: the number 7 is literally identical to 7 coconuts.
No, not quite. But it's
Okay,
not
so,
identical to the coconuts. It's the relationship between the coconuts. It's
okay,
not the entity
so
of the
I
coconuts.
just
it's
asked
the
you
relationship.
if the set was identical to the relationship, and you said yes and no. So what distinguishes those 7 coconuts to the right and the 7 bananas to the left, if 7 is merely a set of relations?
Because of their identity as separate, like coconuts.
That's begging the question, because I'm asking you you said is because it's instantiated. Yeah, but it's also instantiated in the 7 bananas on the left. But the number 7, you said the number 7 is identical to the relationship of 7 coconuts. So if it's identical, then it's
the relationship
different.
that could be found within sets of many different 7.
Oh, okay. So
entities.
It's now you have an instantiation that is not identical to the relationship.
Right.
Okay, so now you refuted yourself. Exactly. Because you said...
Can you explain how I refuted myself? Sorry.
Is the 7 coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
Is the 7 coconuts on the left identical to the 7 bananas on the right?
No.
Okay, so how are they both, quote, 7?
Well, they're 2 different examples of a relationship of 7 different items.
Where's the 7?
They're 2 different types of
Where's
items.
the 7? So they're instantiations of a type or a set, but you said the set was identical to the relationships. But I've given you 2 different sets of 7.
Right, so it would be 2 different examples of 7.
Okay. Examples are instantiations of something higher. Where's the 7? What is the thing that is the same thing between the bananas on the left and the coconuts on the right? You said the relationship. No, again, the relationship is just the 7 things, according to you. So what is shared between those 7 things and the other 7 things?
The amount.
Okay, so right, that's circular. That's begging the question, because that's the set. That's the number 7.
That experience of...
Yeah, so again, so right, so that's self-refuting, right? Because you just said that the number 7 is a set that's actually in the world. Now you're saying it's just experience that would be in your mind.
Well, I'd consider mind also to just be a relationship between, say, an organism and its
Okay, but that's
environment.
not going to answer the problem of the 7 coconuts. This just makes it worse for you, because now you're appealing to something that is neither of those things, and we don't even know if you have a way to access the external world, right? I mean, are you aware of that problem in philosophy? That is there?
Well, yeah, I'm okay. So that problem itself would be based off, because I understand you refer a lot to Hume as sort of like the pinnacle example of like the empiricist thought, and obviously he was the major proponent of skepticism, right?
Yeah, and so has that whole that whole tradition has continued that, right?
Yeah. Well, there is a line of empirical thought that is based off that, because that's sort of takes the framework of like the Cartesian and Kantian sort of indirect representationism of reality, right? So that's all like that's built on the fact that, you know, as Galileo kind of laid out, you have primary and secondary properties, and then Descartes would have said that these secondary properties are radically distinct from the primary, and that exists in the mind and so on.
Locke says that too, right?
That Hume based his skepticism on the Cartesian idea that we experience reality indirectly, whereas I wouldn't hold that position. I would hold a position that we do experience reality.
Direct realism,
like a naive realist position.
It doesn't get you out of the dilemmas, because that you hold that doesn't provide a justification. I mean, I'm glad that you hold that. I believe in a form of realism as well. But that's not the same thing as a justification for the belief in external world. That's a position. What's the justification for that position? And again, that's a more
parsimonious, simple explanation then.
Okay, but that's a presupposition. So why is just because something is appears to be simple, is it therefore more rational or the one that we ought to choose?
Because if we chose something that's a more complicated,
that's begging the question. 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 Begging the question. How do we know that we ought to choose what's more simple? Because we shouldn't choose what's complex. Begging the question.
how should we... Well, sorry, can you repeat the question?
You have a presupposition that the simple explanation is the one that we ought to choose. What is the justification for that belief and for the ought? And you said, because we shouldn't choose complex things.
So the justification for why... Well, I guess that's kind of just repeating myself.
Anyway, look, dude, where is the number 7 in this transaction? Would you agree that you and I are talking about the number 7 right now?
Yes.
Okay. Is the number 7 in my head identical to the number 7 in your head?
Let me think about
Are the molecules in my head the same as the molecules in your head?
No, they would be two different.
Mm-hmm. And you believe the number 7 is identical to molecules? You said it was instantiated.
You said it was instantiated.
You said it was. You said it was instantiated in
between the molecules, not the molecules.
And you
themselves.
said the set was identical to the relationship and is identical to the 7 coconuts.
Well, that's the thing. I don't consider it identical. I consider it that you have the entities, like, and you can have a certain amount of entities.
Okay, what's an entity? Okay, so this is metaphysical language. Where do you get a justification for all this metaphysical baggage that you're using here? Entities?
Okay, so from my understanding, and to be fair, I still have plenty to learn. I'm still learning a lot about this kind of stuff. I would consider that the metaphysics, like I agree that metaphysics is valuable and useful. My question is to be, why does, I don't understand the need for immaterial things. Okay.
Is the number 7 is the number 7
the structure of reality?
Is the number 7 in my head identical to the number 7 in your head?
No, because we have two different experiences of that relationship.
Okay. So what is the common thing between the two experiences? Yeah, exactly.
The sort of like
this
rule
is what
that you see within
you can't
every time we experience.
That's not an answer. That's not an answer. What is the common thing between what's in my head and your head, since you just said they're different? But you said 2 minutes ago that we're both talking about the same number 7. This is Philosophy 101, Plato. Did you take a Plato class?
I've read some of Plato, not enough to.
So Plato 101 would be one in many. Do you know about the problem of the one in many?
No.
All right. So you got cheated in your education. You got sold a bill of goods, and you didn't learn the basics. I'm not trying to be mean to you, but
I'm not.
When we read Plato, see, this is what is produced in the universities is people that don't know fundamental questions in epistemology and metaphysics, like the one in the many. So all I'm doing is rehashing a Platonic dialogue with you.
Mm-hmm. And I'd be happy to look into that more, because right now, as I said, I didn't want to have like a debate or anything. I'm just trying to get some of the questions I need to research myself, So.
Fair enough. Yeah. I mean, you don't have to debate to come on here. So that's true.
Okay, cool.
And I respect that.
Yeah, I mean, I joined this Discord to, challenge my own perspectives and see, some of the stronger arguments for perspectives that I don't hold, so that I can then go, research them and learn more and produce a better argument. Right.
So I would say that reducing conceptual things, invariant things, abstract things to physical things is self-refuting by virtue of what we just talked about in the last 20 minutes. That would be my argument against what you're talking about.
Okay, cool. I think I've got enough material, so I'm going to, do my own research and learn more about that, but thank you for your time.
Yeah, I did do also a talk on universals, which would be relevant to what we're talking about. So if you want to see, it's called Ed Feezer and Universals, something like that. It's a video on this.
I'd be happy to watch it.
Okay.
Is there a link for that? What was the name again? Actually, I'll write it down.
Universals and Ed Feezer, F-E-S-E-R, and if you just type that into YouTube, J Dyer, it'll come up.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
Well, hope you have a good day, mate. See you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, great conversation. Good chat. I will take a couple super chats, and then we will go back to anyone in the Discord audience that would like to chat. Let's see. We had Golden Arm. I don't know if I got to that guy or not, but he said, good talk with Jonathan Pajot. Thank you. Thank you. He sent $100. Wow. Thank you. Big shout out there to Golden Arm. That's like Golden Gun, but with an arm. Orthodoxy chloroquine, $25. Despite the Fourth Lateran Council, the Aquinas Summa, the debate between Barlaam and Palamas, the quotes in Denzinger, I am accused of being a Dyerite and misrepresenting Catholic dogma for stating that absolute divine simplicity is indeed Roman Catholic dogma. Then the trad cat mental gymnastics ensue. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't know why they don't understand that the Fourth Lateran Council's affirmation of Peter Lombard's doctrine of simplicity, which is a version of identity thesis, which is a version of what Eunomius argued, identity thesis. I don't know why they can't see. They don't know what they're talking about. Roman Catholics don't know what Peter Lombard said. They don't know what identity thesis is. I mean, unless they're some specialist. So I'm sorry that you have to go through that debate. I've been through that debate for 10 years, right? I mean, when I understood that, I never looked back to Roman Catholicism, ever. And it's not really that hard to figure out. So in the case of the Roman Catholic, just like with the atheist, it's more so not intellectual problems as it is personal issues, anger, wanting to hold psychological motivations, emotive things. That's why. That's the issue. The Tradcat issue is pride and emotion. It's not logic and theology most of the time. One way, $3. Is grounding a transcendental in God the reification fallacy? No, because it's talking about things at different levels, right? So most of the time, like it's just like circularity, right? Being viciously circular is a fallacy. If you're in an argument with somebody and you said, well, I know that Bill Cosby is my neighbor, and you're wrong because you don't think I live next to a famous person, because it's true by definition that Bill Cosby is my neighbor. Okay, that would be a vicious circle. That would be a terrible argument. Why should we believe Bill Cosby is your neighbor? Because by definition, everyone else in the world is not my neighbor, and therefore that leaves only Bill Cosby. You see, these would be terrible arguments to prove that Bill Cosby is my neighbor. Now, that's in the domain of normal day-to-day type of argument, especially if you're an Esaleb like me and you live next to all the famous people, right? I literally live next. I'm just joking. I don't live next door to Bill Cosby. I live next door to Lil Wayne and Kobe Bryant, the famous Chinese basketball star. So it's not viciously circular when we're talking about different types of things. And what do I mean by different types of things? Transcendental categories are different than normal day-to-day types of things. Why? Because they are preconditions for the possibility of knowledge at all. Okay? So, for example, arguing about is my argumentation about Bill Cosby a fallacy is different than arguing about fallacies themselves, right? Meta-logical questions, meta-ethical questions, metaphysical questions are a different order of thinking and reasoning than the normative ethics, normative epistemological questions. Why? Because they undergird and are necessary for knowledge at all. So, for example, logic. How do I know logic is logical? Well, in order to reason at all, in order to have meaning at all, I have to assume logic, meaning, words, etc. I can't talk about linguistic philosophy without using words. Now, some idiot could come along and say, oh, that's circular. You can't prove words because you're using words. Well, that's impossible to do. And so that's a valid type of circularity. And so all we're saying is that if the Christian paradigm is true, so we're arguing at the level of worldviews or paradigms, which is the basic assumptions in ethics, metaphysics, and philosophy. That's all worldview is. When we're arguing for that paradigm, we're saying that in the Christian position, there's nothing higher than God or that God must submit to other than God himself. So for us, the circularity is ultimately at the level of the existence of God. And that's a better and more coherent, more consistent grounding than to say something like Mac Dohoney did that, well, abstract concepts, logic, transcendental categories, they just are. We don't have any proof of them, they just are. See, that's not a valid move. That's ad hoc. That's violating his own principle, remember, that you shouldn't believe in anything without empirical evidence. But Matt turns around and says, I don't need empirical evidence, though, to believe in transcendental categories. They just are. And he admits that they are. He just says that there's no proof for that. They just are. But Matt, you said don't believe in anything unless there's empirical proof, you see. So the reason it's not reification is that it's a question about, is logic itself logical, right? And that's not that. I mean, people think that this is word salad, or this is not word salad. This is a totally valid question. It's been in philosophy for millennia, right? So the status of immaterial objects is a classic philosophical question. A lot of people just don't know this because they don't know anything about philosophy, but this is not word salad. It's not made up. These are just classical philosophical questions. And the point is that Christianity has great, coherent answers, explanations, justifications, and accounts for transcendental categories. So there's two steps involved here. Number one is we ask the atheist for an account for the things that he's using, like logic, meaning, words, right, identity over time, belief in an external world, etc., etc. The self, right? Those things are assumed, but not demonstrably empirically proven. So we ask the atheist to account for those things. Eventually what happens, most of the time, not always, but most of the time, the atheist realizes that he needs higher order things, abstract things. And then he says what Matt did. Oh, okay, well, they are, but they just are. There is no way to account for them. Oh, okay, so now we don't have to submit to the things that you told us we had to do. You said we had to prove empirically immaterial things. You now admit immaterial things that don't have to be proven. And then we've won. That's all we have to do, because now the atheist has surrendered all reason, all logic, all justification. The debate is over at that point, because we don't have to justify our beliefs anymore, you see. So it's really like a chess game, and I'm waiting to hear him mess up. And that's always what I do. Most of the debates is not me talking. It's me listening. I listen to what they say, and I look for them to mess up. And invariably they do. Because atheism, as the psalmist says, is foolishness. The fool has said in his heart, there is no God. How do we demonstrate the foolishness? Through logic and reason and reducing their position to absurdity. Anonymous, $5. Can you give your thoughts in general on Hegel and the idea that he is the last philosopher, as many Hegelians would say? Yeah, this is a weird kind of idolatry of a idealist. So Hegel is an idealist and a process philosopher. And when you get into these kinds of systems, they're just kind of variations on dialectics. And, Orthodox theology is anti-dialectics, right? That's different than making distinctions. Dialectics is the idea that distinctions are in tension and division. And the whole philosophy of Hegel is everything moving to this omega point, right? Where all of the distinctions are erased. And ultimately, Hegel is a kind of esotericist, right? I mean, he borrowed from these different Hermetic and Kabbalistic traditions. There's scholarship that's been out on this for years now about Hegel being influenced by Hermetic philosophers. And I hate to break it to you, but all the philosophers just repeat and rehash Neoplatonism. Now, they make distinctions. They're not identical. But the German idealists are just rehashing things from the Platonists. And yes, they're doing some new moves where they're actually giving account for process. But actually, Maximus the Confessor already did that. He already gave an account for both the exemplar and the process. Anyway, but that's a great question. So no, I don't give Hegel much weight, and I don't think he's that relevant. He's interesting, but it ultimately would just fall prey to the critiques of Platonism, the critiques of dialectics, and the critiques of absolute divine simplicity. Stoiking, $3. You admit that the Orthodox Church has fallen? No, never admitted that the Orthodox Church has fallen. No idea where you got that. No idea what you're talking about. But thank you for your $3. Why would we have to go to a subverted fallen church to get saved? Never said that. Don't know what you're talking about. Total gibberish. People just say stuff on the internet, and then they're like, yes, he believes that because someone on the internet said he believes that. That must be the case. John Connor, 420. The earth is flat and we are under a dome. God created a VR system that is a test of God and the devil. So this, I think you're trolling. I can never tell if John Connor is trolling or being serious. When we die, we ascend to heaven or to a hell realm, and I tried questioning God, but my brain exploded. Well, I don't. That's more like Gnosticism, so I don't believe the Gnostic worldview, so I don't think we're living in a simulation. If we live in a simulation, then Christ didn't assume human nature, and he hasn't recapitulated the cosmos. So that doesn't make sense with the, Gnostic, Platonic simulation narrative. Nectaria, $100. Wow. Much appreciated there. You bring glory to God and the gifts that he has given you. Well, that's true. Ultimately, reasoning has its place, and reasoning is a gift from God. Yes. So thank you for that. God is smiling on this live stream. Well, I hope so. Not Scotty, $1. Can you explain the controversy of old believers and old ritualists? So there was a couple centuries ago a patriarch who instituted minor liturgical reforms that led to a schism in Russia. And a lot of those people went out into the woods, and then most of them have been reconciled nowadays. So they split over minor things. Many of those people were very superstitious. They lived out in the woods. Some of them even lost the priesthood. So they became kind of like a quasi-pietist type of sect out in the woods. But most of those people have been reconciled to the church. Rolf Stakes, $5. Do Eastern Catholics have divine simplicity as dogma? They might like to believe they don't, but I hate to break it to the Uniates, but you have to believe all of the Roman Catholic Western ecumenical councils. And you can go watch David's video where he shows that they contradict themselves because half of them think they don't have to believe the Roman Catholic ecumenical councils, and half of them do. Well, guess what? You do. Every Roman Catholic in the world, and that includes Uniates, must submit to every doctrine approved by the Roman See for the whole church, universally relating to morals and dogma. So, of course, you have to submit to all the Roman Catholic councils. This is just ridiculous. So you have to believe the Fourth Lateran Council. And the ones that tell you don't are just lying and dishonest. JML, $20. Why would you say why Thomas Aquinas was a favorite philosopher of someone like Ayn Rand? Well, a lot of libertarians have had a lot of respect for people like Aquinas because Aquinas is an empiricist theologian. And that's something that we've critiqued Aquinas for a long time. And there is some debate, for example, in terms of Aquinas' view of universals. But as far as I can see, I don't think he believes in the reality of universals. So you could argue that there's a kind of a quasi-proto-nominalism in Aquinas. And I mean, if you're an empiricist philosopher, yeah, makes sense to me that you wouldn't believe in the reality of universals in the external world. I mean, Aquinas says, following the peripatetic axiom, there's nothing in the intellect that's not first in the senses. Okay, but you only experience a bunch of particulars, and your mind abstracts the phantasm of a universal. But that doesn't mean there's really universals. Okay, well, that's contrary to all of the Christology of the Cappadocians, of Cyril, and of the Seventh Council and Maximus, who all predicated their Christology on a form of realism. How can Christ be the universal man if there's no universals? Anyway, but thank you for that, Jay Mel. Does anybody else in the Discord, would they like to talk? Would they like to destroy the Christian and refute us? Put us in the dirt. Put an end to this religion. Smash us.
There are actually a few questions from the members. Do you want to go through those?
Sure, yeah. We don't have to do a debate, but
yeah,
I'm just
showing up.
I'm just itching to give away this Ethereum. I want to give $100 of Ethereum to any atheist who can do a sustained 10-minute argumentation without contradicting himself. There is the Discord link if anyone wants to come. But yeah, what's a couple of questions there, Greedo?
Okay, so Amarani asks, Jay, may I ask you if salvation necessitates communication with God? This might be self-evident, but doesn't it create an issue where it is hard for an individual to determine and differentiate him participating and communicating with God in delusion? Does there come a point in one's Christian journey where you're certain that you're communicating with the living God?
Well, that's a good question, and I would say that this is one of the reasons why we have sacraments. And so God knew in our weakness that we would desire and crave those kinds of things. And so he gave us things like baptism. So, I mean, one of the things that we believe is in baptismal regeneration. Baptism isn't just a symbol. It's a it's a reality, right? What is signified in the ritual is real. So we have these tactile things that are given to us, like the continuation of the real presence. And it's not, I don't think it's accidental that, so much of Protestantism goes away. It turns to atheism after a century or two, a generation or two. Why? Well, they don't have the real presence. The only sacrament, quote unquote, that most Protestants, I mean, they kind of have baptism, you know what I mean, in a sense. And yeah, some Lutherans believe in baptismal regeneration. But in terms of the continual reception of grace, it's just go hear the lecture and read the book, right? This is like the only real sacrament they have is the book. And the book is good, but the book's not enough. I mean, it's a tactile, physical thing, but it's not just about what we hear and take into our mind. It's also our body. John 6, he that eats my flesh and drinks my blood has eternal life. So God gave us these sacraments so that we would continually have that person-to-person communication, because Jesus said that when you meet my followers, you meet me. You are the hands, you are the feet. The priest is in persona Christi. Confession. You're confessing to Christ. So the easiest and most simple way to have assurance is the sacraments. That's why they're there. Anyway, I hope that helps answer. I mean, there's other things too. Our individual, existential attitude, our inner assurance and peace, our experience, our prayer life, our, reading of scripture, all of those things go into it. But it's all of those things that also give us assurance. And I would say, ask God for assurance, right? I mean, if you lack it, ask God to give it to you. Stinky link 3, by the way, and delusion, this is why a spiritual father is important, right? So we're not on this journey alone. We have hopefully a spiritual father, because he is the one who's there to help us, right? Not fall into the delusion that you're talking about. Is there any more, Greedo?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So, in Orthodoxy, is it in order to be saved? Is it necessary to take the Eucharist?
Well, I think that most of the church fathers are lenient on the people who die as catechumens or die before communing. But for the normal experience of most people in the church, you're probably not going to die before communion. So yes, it is necessary to continue in that practice, because Jesus says, right, he that feeds on me has eternal life.
How about our Protestants who don't believe in literal body and blood not saved then?
Well, there would be different reasons why a Protestant wouldn't be saved, and that would be because they have heterodox false beliefs, and so they are in a severely deficient form of Christianity, a deformed version of Christianity. And the problem with deformed versions of Christianity is that they don't give you the full thing. It's like, do you want to go to a backdoor, like discount hospital? That sounds kind of shady, bro. I don't think I'm going to get the best medicine there. I mean, maybe you'll get something that like helps you for a little while, but the problem is that it's ultimately not the correct hospital, if that makes sense, to use the hospital analogy.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, so it'd be like saying I'm in a city that's got 2 hospitals. One of them is the discount ghetto hospital that tells me to take some placebos and eat something weird like bananas all the time. And then the other hospital has the real medicine that I need. Okay, so if I go to the bad hospital, the discount hospital, and I take 3 placebos and I eat 20 bananas, and I just happen to be like feel good for a week, am I healed? No. And so that's the thing, is that the Protestant churches, they might have sincere people, but they don't have the medicine. The Eucharist is the medicine of immortality.
It seems that a lot of evangelicals hold that kind of view about the Orthodox and Catholic churches the same way you're looking on the Protestant churches.
So
they believe that people are there with good heart, but they're not truly experiencing Christ.
Okay, so right, so ultimately has nothing to do with which position holds what, but what is in fact the case. So it doesn't matter what they think.
Yeah.
Because it's a question of objective truth or falsity. Right? So if there's a tribe in, wherever, Amazon, who doesn't think that numbers are real, and then I'm in a tribe over here in America that believes in numbers, are we going to determine this by like who has the most votes about numbers, or is it a question of are numbers in fact true?
Yeah, it's an objective truth.
Correct, and it's no different with the discrepancy between two so-called churches. Anybody else?
I was wondering if I could ask a question,
Sure.
if you wouldn't mind.
No, go ahead.
So I was watching your video on 10 bad arguments against Tag, and one of them, you said that your criteria for Orthodox epistemology was that the worldview is more coherent, justifying force, and explanatory power. You kind of elaborated on this earlier. But I'm just wondering that why is this the criteria for justification, and why? And why couldn't you just add more categories for what would be this justification? I don't know, like fruitfulness or some other category. And additionally, do you know any good resources to help elaborate that in my learning in Orthodoxy?
Right. So I'm speaking in the language of philosophy when I say that stuff. And so philosophy has its own kind of rules and language and its own prerogatives and domain. And so in the domain of epistemology, that's what is traditionally asked for or expected when it comes to justification or reasons for belief. So in other words, it's just sort of a classical traditional approach to the question of what it means to give an account for, a reason for, or a basis for our beliefs, right? Because certainly we don't want to believe things for no reason, right? We want to have good reasons why we believe things. So when it comes to the domain of philosophy and epistemology and metaphysics, there's certain questions which have just always been there, which are the fundamental questions for that domain, for epistemology. So when you say, well, what about, couldn't I just bring in other things like, quote, fruitfulness? It's not that fruitfulness isn't relevant to the Orthodox Christian worldview or how we know that is true. Jesus says things like, by your fruits you will know them. That's a different domain. That's the domain of lived experience. And that's after the things that would be considered in epistemology. So in other words, let me give you an example of why that would be the case. Let's say somebody said, I'm going to choose the religion that I believe based on how I think people live fruitful lives. Well, the problem there is that can you mute when you're not talking, bro? Can somebody mute, please? Can somebody please mute? All right. Bro, what are you talking about? Thank you. So if we were to say something like, I believe the religion that produces the most happiness. Okay, but there's no clear objective criteria from the outset, prima facie, that we know what happiness is or what fruitfulness is. So in other words, to determine the fruitfulness of a position or a worldview is predicated on prior considerations in the domain of epistemology, metaphysics, and ethics. Do you see?
Yeah, you're right. Like, this is an argument I think you often make that, like, atheistic, like, pragmatism is oftenly, like, ad hoc and arbitrary and things of that nature, right? It just, that seems like there's philosophers that disagree when it comes to what grounds what and what justifies what, and also, like, ideas of what logical consistency is and epistemic relations are and how they relate to different things. So, like, maybe there'd be resources, like, explaining, like, what the Orthodox perception on that might be.
Yes. Now, the problem is that there's not a whole lot of modern Orthodox philosophers that are doing a lot of work in epistemology, but there are some. All right. So we have Father Deacon Dr. Ananias, who is great on this topic. And in fact, he has, I think, 4 papers in the PDF bank that relate to this topic. That does relate to an Orthodox epistemology. In fact, 2 of his most recent papers are about tag and Orthodox epistemology. So I would definitely say start there. Those are really good. In terms of just epistemology, the Green Bonjour text is the best for that. So I would say if you have a couple of those, I mean, if you're interested in philosophy, not everybody's interested. You don't have to do philosophy, right? Not everybody has to do this. It's not everybody's calling. You don't have to. But if you are interested, I would say, that would be a good introductory text to what epistemology is.
Cool, thanks.
Sure.
Also, really quickly,
sure.
Do you know any videos you've gone into maybe refuting infinitism? I know you've made a lot of videos against foundationalism,
Mm-hmm.
Also pragmatism and other atheistic starting points, but have you addressed infinitism? And if so,
no, enlighten me. What is that? I don't even know what that is.
Oh, it's a form of epistemic, the Munchausen's trilemma. There's 3 basic ways you can go. You can take an arbitrary starting point, foundationalism, make a coherent web of beliefs like coherentism, or there's an infinite regress. And some atheist philosophers attempt to say that we can have some sort of starting point for our beliefs, even having an infinite regress of causal chains, or not causal change, but justifiability.
So I don't think, for example, that the Orthodox position is a coherentism, right? And this is I'm not saying you're doing this, but a lot of people mistake this. I think, you're adopting one of those schools or something. No, we're saying that there's insights in different ones. You could take foundationalism in a sense and say, are there starting points? Sure. But how we justify the starting points is a different question. So, for example, I believe, like a Thomist, in causation in teleology, right? So we believe in cosmological principles and we believe in teleological principles. Does that mean that I'm a Thomist? No, because how I give an account for teleology and causation is different than the way the Thomist does. And so I will give an account for it from the Christian paradigm and transcendental argumentation, which I think is a better argument. So in the same way, although I don't know enough about infinitism to try to say that we would pull from that, but when it comes to foundationalism or when it comes to coherentism, I think we can pull from both of those and have legitimate insights, and we're not wedded to any secular system.
Okay, cool. Thank you for your time.
Absolutely, sure. D Solano, $1. Do you think Serbia has a good future ahead of them in terms of geopolitics? I don't know enough about Serbian geopolitics to say. I hope so. I know they are, have a lot of Orthodox people there. And we have a lot of Serbs in our Discord. So I certainly hope so, but I don't know enough about the specifics of Serbian geopolitics. I was wondering if you had any thoughts on the Carvalho-Dugan debate. Yeah, I read that back at the time. Trying to remember what I think I was was I track? No, I was already leaving track Catholicism, at least when I read that. I don't remember exactly when the debate happened. It's like a written back and forth, and I read it. I just remember wasn't the Carvalho guy appealing to Fatima? I just think Fatima is a terrible argument for Roman Catholicism. I don't know why Roman Catholics think, I guess because of their classical foundationalism, they think this is this really strong argument. I think it's a terrible argument. I don't see how that proves Roman Catholicism. Even if Fatima is a miraculous event, miraculous events are claimed by every religion. I don't see how that's a proof of your religion. And I have a lot of skepticism about Fatima anyway. So, but I'm trying to remember. I remember reading the debate, and then I thought Dugan was making good points. And then when Carvalho or whatever his name is started appealing to Fatima as an argument, I checked out. So that's all I remember. Paco, $3. Are Roman Catholic sacraments valid? The Orthodox Church has a sense in which the baptism of a Roman Catholic could potentially be valid, depending on, like for example, a uniate baptism. There might be questions when it comes to the sprinkling of a person in a Latin rite. That's typically decided on by the bishops. The economia of the church can make up for what's lacking, and so therefore it can fulfill the grace even if it wasn't really done properly. But that can also be abused, and so it is therefore better to just baptize them in an Orthodox baptism. And ironically, even Roman Catholics do this same very thing, which they call conditional baptism. But there's a difference between something being, quote, valid and something being efficacious. So we do not say that the Roman Catholic has the grace in their sacraments. Now, if God individually gives that person grace, that's up to them, that's between them and God. We judge things in the public domain, not on an interior person by person perspective. But when it comes to the Eucharist, I believe the Confession of Dositheus makes it clear that Roman Catholics do not have the Eucharist. So I would say there is an argument to be made for a, quote, valid baptism in some cases, but not an efficacious baptism in terms of grace. And so it becomes efficacious when they are united to the Orthodox Church. And they ought to be given the Orthodox, proper Trinitarian form of baptism. That's what should happen. But I do not believe they have the Eucharist, no. And I think that's what the Confession of Dositheus says. What happens to a Roman Catholic when they die? Well, it's not up to me to make that decision. We don't know the fates of people. Again, Paul says, what have we to do with judging those who are without? We judge those within. So we warn people. We say you need to become Orthodox. Beyond that, that's up to them and God. So thank you for those super chats. So, anybody else in the Discord? Do we have any more Discord discussion people?
Yeah, I was gonna ask, do you consider do you consider Oriental Orthodox Christians just as Orthodox as Eastern Orthodox Christians?
No, absolutely not.
How so?
Because you can't be Orthodox and believe heterodox doctrines and reject the counsels and teaching of the church. It's really, really simple. Did you want to add on to that?
No, I'm just hearing from other sides.
Are you an Oriental Orthodox person?
No. A lot of my family is, but no, I'm just here to just listen, and I'm just trying to hear from as many perspectives as I can on everything.
Yeah, fair enough. So I would say that if you want the easiest, smallest book on that question, I would say read St. Maximus's Dispute with Pyrrhus. It's a little book. It's about 120 pages. And I think it's the best overall, because by the time of Maximus, the question between the Orientals and the Orthodox has developed to a question of will and energy. And it becomes...
What's it called again?
The Dispute with Pyrrhus. Maximus the Confessor. It's a little 120-page book. And the dispute ultimately becomes, is our will and energy properties of nature or person? And Maximus effectively argues that on the basis of the Trinity, our Trinitarian theology, will and energy are faculties of essence, of nature, not person. So Christ having two wills, two energies, right, means that will and energy are faculties of nature and not hypostasis. So, anyone else?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Yeah. A while back I was watching one of your videos, and you basically made the parallel of associating the abomination of desolation with the siege of Jerusalem. I would just like to understand your justification for that. And if you still hold that position. Thank you.
Yeah, I've held that position for, I don't know, since 2000 and One. The justification for that position would be, I mean, are you saying like a simple argument, or do you want like books?
Yeah, because I mean, it seems to me that, like, obviously in the Old Testament, the abomination of desolation had to do with cease of the continuous sacrifice, and it seems to me that when Christ talks about the abomination of desolation standing in the holy place, he's talking about the church and not the obviously one wouldn't say that the church was
no, it's
Jewish
I mean
people from 70 AD.
No.
Just from my understanding, it seems that the abomination of desolation would be something specifically to do with the ceasing of the continual sacrifice. Yeah. So
yeah, that's what happened in 70 AD. Have you read Luke 21?
Luke 21, is that like kind of like a parallel to like Matthew 24?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what is Luke? Hold on. Who is the audience of Luke's gospel?
I know Matthew was the Jews. Luke was.
Oh, it's a Gentile audience.
Was it the Greek?
Yeah.
Sorry?
It's a Gentile audience. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So in other words, Luke does something that Matthew doesn't do, which is that he makes that Olivet discourse more clear in terms of what it's about and who the audience is. Who's Jesus' immediate audience?
In Luke?
Luke 21.
I'm sorry, not in Luke. I'm sorry. Repeat that again?
Yes, Luke 21.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead and.
Who is Jesus' immediate? Hold on. So in hermeneutics, are you familiar with that?
Not really, no.
Okay, so you should know this, number one. So number one, hermeneutics is how we interpret the text. And the church and most people, right, we have principles for doing this, okay? Do you know what the first principle might be? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, not trying to be mean. It's just illustrating a point.
Basically of the hermeneutic.
So hermeneutics is the science or the process of interpreting texts, and it follows rules. And it follows rules so that we don't go crazy with it. So we don't go into, everything's an allegory. Everything is literal, right? So there's rules to how we interpret texts. And the church fathers have laid down like a 4-tiered pattern of hermeneutics in the 4 senses of Scripture. So the first sense of Scripture is the literal sense. And in modern exegesis, this is called grammatical historical interpretation. And what we do in that level of interpretation is we ask, who is the immediate audience that this is speaking to or written to? So we know it's written to Gentiles. Who is Jesus talking to?
I mean, it would be Gentiles, correct?
No. In the text, in Luke 21, who is he talking to?
He would be talking to the faithful. I mean, I'm a little confused. Sorry.
He's talking to his disciples.
Just explain. Yeah.
Okay. So let's look at Luke 21.
Yeah, let me just pull it up. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, what chapter in Luke again?
21.
Got it.
Okay. I can never read under these blue and red lights, but it's just looks so cool. So let me zoom out here. Okay. And he looked up and saw the rich putting their gifts into the treasury. And he saw also a certain poor woman putting in 2 mites. And he said, truly I say to you that the poor widow has put more than all. For all these out of their abundance have put in their offerings, but she out of her poverty put in all that she had. Then some spoke to him about the temple. The temple. Not the church, the temple. Okay, that's where the treasury is, at the temple. Do you see all these beautiful stones? How it's adorned? Hold on, dude. Then he spoke about the temple. How it was adorned with beautiful stones and donations. And he said, can somebody mute, please? These things which you see, this temple here, the temple in Jerusalem, the Jewish temple, not one stone will be left on another that will not be thrown down. Then they said to him, his disciples, Teacher, when will this be? What is the sign that will be when these things are about to take place? Take heed that you be not deceived. Many will come in my name and say, I am he. Now, you there in the immediate context is the disciples in front of him. He is talking about the temple in front of him. And he's saying, you don't be deceived. There will come a time. So in other words, he's warning them, his immediate audience, about something that they will experience and see. All right?
I see, yeah.
Now, but you will see that the time is near. Do not go after these false disciples, he says, but when you see wars and commotions, do not be terrified, for these are the things which must come to pass, but the end will not be yet. Will not come immediately. Then he said, nation will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, and there will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines, pestilence, fearful sights, and great signs from heaven. Behold, all these things, but before all these things, they will lay hands on you, the disciples. They will persecute you. They will deliver you up to where? Evangelical churches, Roman Catholic churches, synagogues. So still his immediate audience, synagogues. Therefore, settle in your hearts not to meditate beforehand what you will say, for I will give you a mouth and a wisdom which all your adversaries will not be able to contradict or resist. You will be betrayed by your parents and your brothers and your relatives and your friends, and some of you will be put to death. Now, guess what? In the book of Acts, these things transpire. There are false prophets in the book of Acts. There are miraculous events. There is Stephen given an immediate voice from God to speak to the people putting him to death. Okay. There's things that go on with Paul, much like what you see here. Now, before you say anything, let's keep going. You will be hated for my name's sake, but not a hair of your head will be lost. By your patience, you will possess your souls. But when you, the audience, same people in front of him, when you see Jerusalem surrounded by armies, not the church, not Rome, not the Roman Catholic Church, not evangelical churches in Israel, according to John Hagee, you, standing in front of me, see the temple that we're standing in front of. What? Okay. 20, let's keep going. 21. Let those who are in Judea, okay, not those who are in Moscow, not those who are in America, let those in Judea flee to the mountains. Jesus' immediate audience is the people standing in front of him, and he's talking about an event that they will see. He says in Matthew, there are some of you standing here who will not touch death until they see the kingdom of God. So there are apostles who would be alive to see the ending of the old covenant, which is not his death. A lot of people mistake this. They think the end of the old covenant is when Jesus died. It is finished. Okay, yeah, but the ending of the old covenant is the rolling up of heaven and earth, signified in the destruction of the temple. So if you don't understand the crucial importance of the destruction of the temple in 70 AD in redemptive history, you're going to make all the stupid, goofy evangelical mistakes that people make when they try to interpret these texts. So again, let's see what Jesus says about fleeing to Judea, from Judea to the mountains. Let those who are in the midst of her depart, and let those who are in the country enter, because let them not enter, because these are the days of vengeance. Don't go to Jerusalem, because these are the days of vengeance, that all things written in the prophets might be fulfilled. What's he talking about? All of those Old Testament prophecies about the destruction of the temple, including the earlier types of the destruction of the temple that would occur in 70 AD in the Babylonian captivity of the Jews. You see, the Babylonian captivity, the destruction of the temple, is a type of what happens under the Maccabees and what happens in 70 AD. So when you go read Maccabees and you see the defilement of the temple, which is identified as the abomination of desolation that Daniel talked about, Jesus is citing Daniel and perhaps also Maccabees to say that that same model of desolation, of abomination of desolation that occurred in the Babylonian captivity in 586, and in the Maccabean revolt, will happen again, and it will be the punishment on this generation. He says in Matthew 24, this generation. How do we know who he's talking to? Luke 21 identifies conveniently for you the audience that he's talking to, the disciples, the people who would flee Jerusalem and Judea to Petra. This actually happened. The Christians fled the city to Petra. And we know that this is still in the pre-70 AD time frame because he even says, you better pray that it's not on the Sabbath. In other words, the Sabbath laws are still in effect. So it's not 70 AD, post-70 AD. The text, clear as day, is telling us about what happened in 70 AD. And I'm going to make it even clearer. Watch this. Woe to those who are pregnant and to those who are nursing babies in those days, for there will be a great distress upon the world. No, upon this land and this people. The same people in Matthew 23, the Jews and the scribes and the Pharisees that he said would experience the wrath of heaven. The days of vengeance. Matthew 23 says, you woe to you scribes and Pharisees. Everything will come upon this land, this people. It's not talking about the end of the world. Now, there is an end of the world application. It does apply to the end of the world, and the church fathers are very clear about that. But the church fathers are also very clear about the fact that this is a preterist text. It is clear as day talking about what is happening in the days of the apostles, in Jesus' time. And it happened. Eyewitness Josephus, read Josephus. He saw all of this. Josephus vindicates everything that is in Luke 21 and Matthew 24. He says, I saw all these things. That's really happened. Jerusalem was destroyed by Titus Vespasian in 70 AD. And they brought the Roman legions, the pagan Roman insignias, and set them inside the Holy of Holies. Exact same pattern of what happens in Maccabees and what the Babylonians did in 586. So as we keep reading, we notice they will fall by the edge of the sword, right? We know Josephus, I think he says, I don't remember, he even gives a number. Hundreds of thousands of Jews killed by the Romans in this siege. Jerusalem, key text. Jerusalem will be trampled by Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. This is not a mystery. In 70 AD, when the temple is destroyed, when sacrifice and offering come to an end, the covenant is open to the Gentiles. Jerusalem is lost. There's no temple. There hasn't been a temple since 70 AD. Fulfilling Genesis 49, the royal scepter will not depart from Judah until Shiloh comes. There's not been a king. There's not been a priesthood in Jerusalem since 70 AD. It's a clear sign to the whole world that this is fulfilled. Now what do we live under? The times of the Gentiles. What does that mean? The Gentile church. Predicted in dozens and dozens of Psalms and major and minor prophets. Even in the Abrahamic covenant. The Abrahamic covenant prophesies the Gentile church. So when he goes on to talk about the cosmic signs, if you look in the Old Testament texts for prophetic symbolism, if you look at Isaiah 19, if you look in Ezekiel, I don't remember the exact text off the top of my head, but there are multiple places where God destroying a land is signified by stellar events. So not every stellar event, just like Joel 3, the sun will not give its light, the moon will be darkened, and I will pour out my spirit upon all flesh. Okay, some of those signs happened in the first century. But it didn't happen right when Pentecost happened, right? It's prophetic language, prophetic symbolism. The removal of the sun and the moon is a symbol of the removal of the existing state power structure. The removal of the king and the removal of the high priesthood in Israel is the removal of sun and moon. Now, I'm not saying that at the end of the world there won't be... Can somebody please mute? I'm not saying at the end of the... Oh my gosh. I'm not saying at the end of the world there won't be a literal rolling up of the heavens and the earth. There will be. But the rolling up of the temple and the land in 70 AD is the type of the rolling up of the heavens and the earth, because the temple was a type of this world and this earth and these heavens. These heavens and this earth will be rolled up in the conflagration. So it's a both and, not an either or. But as you can see, and we can keep going. If you see there in Luke 29, then he spoke a parable. Look at the tree, the fig tree. What's the fig tree? It's Israel, obviously, always. It is already budding, and you know that yourself that summer is near when you see it budding. So you, people in front of him, when you see these things happen, know that the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God is the church. The kingdom of God began at Pentecost, and it came into fruition in the sense of expanding when the temple was destroyed. We have to understand the crucial significance of the destruction of the temple as the culmination of the transition period. So the transition period is the movement out of the Mosaic administration into the kingdom administration of the church. And that's from the time of Christ's birth to 70 AD. It's not just resurrection. 70 AD is just as important as any of these other redemptive events, as incarnation, as ministry, as his death, as his descent in Hades, and then his resurrection and his ascension, and then also 70 AD. It's part of the redemptive process and the transition from the old to the new covenant. That's why it's called the time of the Gentiles. And Paul says in Romans 11 that the time of the Gentiles will end when you begin to see Jews grafted back into their vine, their branch. He says that the conversion of Jews will be a sign of the end and will be life from the dead for the world. And the church fathers teach everything that I'm not making anything. This is everything the church fathers say, is what I'm telling you. So anyway, we can keep going, and there's more text. But in Matthew 22 or 22, I think he says, the kingdom of God will be taken from these people and given to a nation producing the fruits thereof. That's exactly what happened in 70 AD. That's exactly the same thing as what he means by the time of the Gentiles. So, that was all. Okay. So we got trolls. Can somebody mute the cows in the audience? So that's literally all atheists can do is like... I'd like to debate that cow, by the way, if he wants to debate.
Indie defense.
What?
It was a Protestant, actually, not an atheist.
What if that was an actual cow and he's just hanging out in the
I was about to say, I would
this?
literally debate a cow right now, and I'll give him 100 cow Ethereum if he will make consistent, logical cow arguments. I want to see that bovine logic, baby. Okay, so back to the guy about preterism. I mean, is it not obvious at this point that that's talking about 70 AD?
Yeah, I mean, it seems like there's a lot of parallels, especially when in Matthew, how it says, like, you know, basically you flee to mountains. I mean, it's a direct, like, kind of association. So, yeah, it seems like that is probably case. But yeah, I appreciate you explaining that to me. But yeah. Sure.
So if you want recommended reading, I would say there's a good book called Before Jerusalem Fell by Dr. Ken Gentry. And there's an excellent commentary on the book of Revelation by David Chilton called Days of Vengeance. Those are two really good books on this topic. And there's more. George Peter Holford has a little book called Destruction of Jerusalem. David Chilton has another book called Paradise Restored that's good. Milton Terry has a book called Biblical Apocalyptics that's good. So there's more. I can keep going, but those are some good ones on that.
Excellent. Wrote those down. Appreciate it, Jay.
Absolutely. Anytime. Anybody else? I want Cowman to come back. That's a fallacy, dude. It's a bovine fallacy.
Show yourself, Cowman.
I'm not Cowman, but I got a question.
Okay.
So I guess your position is that any sort of logical realism requires the existence of God by transcendental argument, but obviously the inverse. Is that true or not? Is logical realism intrinsic to orthodoxy? Do you even have a position on that?
I mean, in the sense that I think pretty much every church father and saint theologian of our church would absolutely affirm realism. Yeah, sure. I mean, Maximus the Confessor is clearly a realist. Sure. For example,
Okay.
Ambiguum 10 is all about universals. So, yeah. I think also
Have you
if
done
we
any videos about like that topic? Because when you use the transcendental argument, you're just kind of hedging your bets on the other person buying into logical realism.
No, that's not all I'm doing. I'm also refuting. The first hour of this chat was a guy who was trying to reject realism. So, no, I think that rejecting realism is self-refuting.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yeah, sure. I mean, for example, the Pelican book on the Cappadocians, Christianity and Classical Culture, the Metamorphosis of Natural Theology in the Cappadocians. That is a great book for showing the epistemological and metaphysical positions of the Cappadocians. And clearly the Cappadocians' metaphysics and ontology goes into how we believe God relates to the world, how we explain the Trinity, how we explain Christology. And so that will become pretty much the norm for the church. I mean, not everybody will have the same degree of realist influence like the Cappadocians do, but when we get into later Christological debates and triadological debates, I mean, there's just really no question that they're realists. I mean, you can't have Christ as universal man if you don't believe in universals. So universals go hand in hand with realism because we're not nominalists. So there's really no way to have a consistent metaphysic that's orthodox and be a nominalist. It just makes no sense with the first 700 years of the church. It's just ridiculous, really. But, you know, I mean, according to, what is that guy's paper? I mean, according to this guy, Aquinas is a nominalist, really. Or not a nominalist, but a moderate realist. I'll put that paper. I recommend this paper, by the way, to make this point. Dr. Brower from Purdue, he makes there's a good case to be made for this. I'll put it in the live chat for the people listening. So there's that. And then it's in the PDF bank. I put it in there weeks ago. I'll share it again later. But I know you weren't really inquiring about Thomism, but I always love a chance to jab at the Thomists. So especially since that kid said that he contracted diseases from listening to me destroy Eric Ibarra. So anybody else?
I guess I'll ask a question. So I heard somewhere there was it was a chat yesterday, that there was I wanted to hear your thoughts on the Knights Templars, and if they had like any connections with the Masonic Lodge. Sorry, I'm sure this is a basic ass question, but.
Well, I mean, if you read the Council of Vienne in the minutes and statements of the council, they say that the Templars were involved in these practices, which amount to kind of bizarre. They seem to be, I would just say, kind of just satanic practices. But later history disputes that was actually the case, and then they claim that, you know, the King of France or whoever was behind the Council of Vienne basically was just trying to get their money because the Templars had become wealthy. So this has led to a bunch of lore and a bunch of disputes about the real, things that the Templars were into. I don't have any position on it. I don't really care. I don't know. I have a lot of books on it. I've read books over the year on it. I've got, I think his name's Robinson's book on it. I don't know if anybody knows, but what's called Freemasonry is obviously later than the Templars. Is it possible that the Templars got into Hermeticism and Kabbalism? Sure. Is it possible that later speculative Freemasonry was influenced by those currents? Sure. But I don't know for sure. That's all I can tell you. By the way, I've not been able to find this. I am 99.9% sure that I read this maybe 7 or 8 years ago. The Vatican did issue an apology to the Templar order, believe it or not. It was on the Vatican website, again, 7 or 8 years ago. I've not been able to find it, but I'm positive that does exist. So you can read that how you will. Is that the Vatican admitting that they were wrong all along? Is that the Vatican basically admitting that they're also Hermetic Kabbalists like the Templars? I don't know. None of those answers would surprise me, but That's my answer to that.
Thank you for your time.
Sure. But you can read the Council of Vienne. That is what accuses them of that. Absolute Recoil, $20. Do you know any good sources covering the music of the Orthodox Church? I'm sure there's a million things like that. Any leads on sacred music scholars who focus on musical structure and theory? Actually, when we were at the Sophia conference in 2020 in January, a blind nun presented one of the coolest papers I've ever seen on St. Maximus the Confessor and music theory. But I hate to inform you that none of those are published. So I don't know. I have the paper, but it's not published. So who could talk? I don't know this topic. I mean, I don't know Orthodox music structure and theory. I'm sure there are a lot of people who do. It would just be, actually, what I would say is come to the Discord and ask those questions, and you could probably find somebody who would be better attuned to that than me. Pano probably knows that. He's in the Discord. Pano's a solid dude. He can sing with the best of them. I'm sure he knows that stuff because I think he's trained in that. So, but I can talk a little bit about music theory in the sense of the philosophy of it, but beyond that, I can't really. I could tell you what Maximus the Confessor has to do with music and Orthodox chant, but I can't tell you anything beyond that. So sorry. I can't give you that paper because it's a physical paper. Like, you want me to feed it into the fax machine so that I can fax it into the internet for you guys so you can download the fax? All right, we've been going for 2 hours. Anybody else got any last questions before we close up tonight? We did get an atheist who had asked some good questions. I appreciate his sort of nominalist reductionist questions, but we didn't get no contenders for the $100 worth of Ethereum tonight. Maybe we'll extend that offer to the future. We'll get an atheist who can do it. Any more questions?
I have a guy. This guy can go too. We got a guy, Trinitarian Messianic Yahwehist, is trying to figure out how to join the VC. But in the meantime, this other guy can go.
This sounds rough.
I put in a super chat, Jay. I don't know if you got it. But
which one? Oh, I'm sorry, I missed one. I did miss one. Hold on. Excuse me.
Yeah,
I missed 2 super chats. Let me scroll back. I'm sorry, guys. Hold on. Not Scotty, $4. I would like to join a Cenobitic monastery in the U.S. I don't know about that. I mean, we've had Metropolitan Jonah lecturing in the server, and Metropolitan Jonah is starting a new monastery. So I would say,
I think I just figured it out. Out how to join.
Okay, hold on, bro. Just a second. I'll let you talk. I'll let you talk in just a second.
Hold up. That was a bad time. Folks are coming home. I'm sorry, guys. Hopefully I can join the next chat.
Do you want to make your argument right now?
Well, I don't really have an argument. I got more of inquiries about the Orthodox faith.
Okay. I mean, it's up to you, dude. It's your call.
Okay. My first question would be, what's the best way to understand the Transfiguration? Like the literal, you know what I mean, for the Eucharist, when the Orthodox, they take their Eucharist, it's the literal presence of Christ, and it's the literal body. What's the best way for me to understand that?
So let's rewind a bit. The Transfiguration is Matthew 17 when Jesus is on the mountain.
I mean, what's it called? I'm using the wrong word then. I'm sorry.
It's okay. I just want us to understand that because ironically, the Transfiguration is part of the model of how we're going to understand the Eucharist, because we believe that Christ is the second. Jesus is the second person of the Godhead, right? So when he became man, when he took on human nature, he did that to heal or what we call deify, that is, make immortal and eternal our nature that had fallen sick from sin, right? So what he does in the incarnation to his humanity, and we see this throughout his ministry, especially in the Transfiguration, which is where we see the divine energy and power glowing and shining out of his humanity. So he is transfiguring that humanity. And the Eucharist for us is the same thing. It's the miracle of the bread and wine through the divine energies, not just being deified, but also becoming, in reality, his deified flesh. St. Cyril says that the Eucharist is the deified flesh of Christ. So that's how we partake of the deified flesh, to eat God and to become God.
Okay, does the Old Testament verses about taste and see that Yahweh is good, does that kind of link in here?
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. I don't have a problem with this because I don't want to limit the power of Jesus, and if he is willing to bring his divine nature into our time and space, he's at liberty to do whatever he wants with it. There's probably more I'd have to dive into about that and why it's theologically sound, but I don't have a problem with that. I guess there's other Protestant strawmen that hopefully later on, I can't think of any right now, and you guys said you've been at this for a while. I think I'll let that go, and I want to dissect these Protestant strawmen and show
Sure.
and understand why they're strawmen, give Orthodox a fair shake.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Because if you guys are right, I need to know, because
yeah, I think
I need,
right.
I need to be corrected.
Yeah, I think that's the right attitude. So yeah, I appreciate that.
All right, awesome. I appreciate it, man. My pops just came home. Thank you for having me on. God bless you, brother.
Yeah, man. Thank you. Anytime. Now let's see. The other super chat that I missed is Terry, $10. By the way, I wasn't trying to. So I would say, if you come in the Discord, we could put you in touch, I guess, with Metropolitan Jonah, who will be coming back to do another set of catechetical lectures in the near future. And so I'm sure that he would be much better at directing somebody towards monastic life than me, or, speak to your priest as well. Terry, $10. Could you talk about the metaphysics of the church fathers and suggest some reading? Yes. So again, the first best book for understanding Cappadocian metaphysics, and the reason that they're so crucial is because they will really give us the Trinitarian doctrine, right? So the Second Ecumenical Council is Constantinople I. It is the full ratification and affirmation of Cappadocian theology, particularly in relation to nature, person, will, energy in the Trinity. And their metaphysics is what undergirds that approach. And the best book for that, it's a little heavy, it's going to take some time, but you need to get through it, is Yaroslav Pelikan's book, Christianity and Classical Tradition, or Christianity and the Classical Tradition, the Metamorphosis of Natural Theology and the Cappadocians. Pelikan, purple book. Okay, so that will give you their metaphysic, and that will be the determining metaphysic, generally speaking, for the next several centuries of the Church Fathers. There's a little bit of variation in the metaphysics of St. John Damascus, but it's not a huge deal. But I would say also, yes, you could read The Fount of Knowledge by John Damascus, which will give you a kind of a basic approach to all the terms and the meanings of the words that we have, like hypostasis or, these kinds of things. Ousia, essence, right? All of those things are going to be defined in a really basic general sense in Fount of Knowledge. And then when you get into John Damascus on the Orthodox faith, he will apply all of that, and he will sort of execute the terminology and Fount of Knowledge into the systematic theology of on the Orthodox faith. So those are two great places to start for the metaphysics of the Church Fathers. You said the Catholics have Ed Feser. Now, if you want something on that level of an intellectual thing, I would say Dr. David Bradshaw's book, Aristotle, East and West. Right? So if you want a Catholic or an Orthodox version of what Ed Feser does, it's Dr. David Bradshaw's Aristotle, East and West. You said the Evangelicals have William Lane Craig, the Reformed have Van Til and John Frame. We have Dr. David Bradshaw, but you can also read Demetrius Daniloi, Orthodox Dogmatics, especially Volume 1. You could read Vladimir Lossky, Mystical Theology of the Eastern Church, and Dogmatic Theology by Lossky. Now, there's more, but those are good places to start. Absolute Recoil, $20. No, we already did that. Russell Snow, $3. I was hoping that you would debate Pajot. Well, no, we weren't trying to set up a debate. We were trying to set up a friendly interview conversation. I always wanted to have a friendly approach with Jonathan. So we did have some drama in the past. We've buried all that stuff, so I think we're good now. But I don't think Jonathan is into doing debates, and I'm not faulting him for that. Not everybody is called to do debates, and that's not everybody's cup of tea. I think Jonathan is really good at what he does and his approach. So I don't know if a debate would be the best format for that kind of stuff. But if he has a differing view on evolution or that kind of stuff, it's always open for discussion. I'm always open to have that kind of a discussion. But and it's fine if he doesn't want to have that discussion. If he just wants to continue discussing the areas of agreement, that's fine with me as well. I think a lot of people think that I just want to be contentious. I just want to debate. No, I mean, most of the work that we do on this channel is not debates, right? I mean, most of it is lectures, movie analysis, philosophy, geopolitics. And I mean, I'm saying in ratio, right? We've done a lot of debates, but in ratio, the debates as opposed to the rest of the videos is like, 20 videos to 900 videos, right? I'm guessing 20 debates in the last 4 years versus 900 videos. So, we don't actually, because debates are rare. A really quality debate is actually rare. Because most of the time, people that want to debate, they far overestimate their capacities, right? They overestimate their skill set, their abilities. Most of the time, they don't know what they're talking about. And so that's why debates are actually, a quality debate is actually rare. I'm not talking about Pajot in regard to that. I'm talking about the atheists. So I just don't think Jonathan's into debates, and that's okay. Not everybody has to be into debates. I come out of philosophy. That's what I studied. And in philosophy, it's all debates. I mean, it's just, even if it's not a literal formal debate, the whole history of philosophy is a debate. It's a conversation that's ongoing where this generation of philosophers critiques the philosophers of yesteryear. That's the whole thing, is debating. So that's the whole milieu. I was forged in the fires of debate, bro. I am a debate bro. I've always been a debate bro. And I don't even care that much about debate. It's just something that I will do and I feel like I have to do sometimes. Anyway, Beans $1. Jay, unless I am misremembering, you had previously said that you use coherence rather than foundationalism. Right. So I'm speaking of like strict adherence. So in the sense of the coherentist critique of foundationalism, the coherence view is more coherent. It makes more sense. But what I said earlier tonight was that, could I say that there's foundational beliefs? Sure, but I'm just using foundational belief in a different sense than the way a classical foundationalist does. That's all I meant. Thus, you said, is there a way in which they can be reconciled? Again, it depends on what you mean, right? It depends on what we mean. So, for example, when we critique, when the atheists or the people who disagree with us, when they come on, they say, how do you refute every worldview? There's like a million of them. So by default, you're wrong because you can't refute every worldview. Well, so how do we reply to that? Well, as you know, we say there's not an infinite number of worldviews. Did you not know this? There's actually a limited number of worldviews in regard to basic foundational starting points. Okay? So foundational starting points is not the same thing as classical foundationalist epistemology. See that difference there? Anyway, that was the last super chat. Is anybody else in the Discord before we close it up tonight?
I had one, Jay.
Sure.
Sure. Do you have any recommendations for orthodox critiques of the school of thought of German idealism? It's something I'm rubbing up against a lot in my circles, and I kind of want to be able to articulate the orthodoxy of that school of philosophy.
I believe God History Dialectic in the second or third volume critiques idealism and Hegelianism. I'm going to make sure here. I'm trying to remember if it's 3. Pretty sure he gets into Hegel because he gets into the philosophy of the second. First Europe is the first 1,000 years. Second Europe is the second 1,000 years.
Cool. What was that book title again? God, History, and Idealism?
No, God, History, Dialectic.
All right, cheers, thanks.
4 volumes. And then Losky critiques German idealism in Vision of God. Either Vision of God or no, it's Vision of God. I think he does a brief critique in dogmatic theology as well. But I don't know that anybody's really done like a systematic critique of German idealism. But the thing is that any of the idealisms are going to kind of they're just going to be subject to the critiques that we would make of Platonism and Neoplatonism. So even if you don't have a specific critique of German idealism, the presuppositions and a lot of the metaphysical beliefs of German idealism are going to be very similar to Platonism. And so the way that I would critique a German idealist would be very similar to the way that I would critique Platonism. And so there's going to be dialectics, there's going to be monism, dualism, process philosophy. All of those things are very, very problematic. And so like what we get with Hegel, for example, is the ultimate attempt to create, to do a system building project. And Orthodox Christianity is not a human rational system building project. As much as you might think, or hear me talking about these abstract things like the logi and the nuances of Maximus's grand metaphysics, you might think this is a big system building project. It's not. So it's true that you've got Cappadocians pulling from Neoplatonists, you've got Maximus the Confessor pulling from Porphyry, pulling from Plato, pulling from Aristotle. But that's different, we would say, than a system building autonomous project, because what they're trying to do is give the Christian metaphysic its context within Revelation. And so I don't believe they're doing what Roman Catholics do, which is kind of having these two independent spheres with a little overlap, right, between natural theology and Revelation. It's rather like this, right, where they're distinct, but you can't understand nature without revelation. And revelation is predicated on nature in the sense of the incarnation, or the logi being energetically, immanently present in the created order. So in other words, we are not bound to a system. And even though we have a system, it's not an autonomous system building project, because the church fathers drew from the wells of different traditions in the sense of what they found accurate and true. Hence, when you read, for example, a lot of people make a sort of a basic mistake where they think, Orthodoxy is Neoplatonic and Roman Catholicism is Aristotelian. No. The whole thesis of Aristotle, East and West by Dr. Bradshaw is to demonstrate that we have a tremendous influence from Aristotle, especially in Maximus and especially in John Damascus. Does that mean that we don't have Neoplatonic influence? No, we do. Right? The Logi doctrine is influenced by Neoplatonism. That doesn't mean it's Neoplatonism. It's an influence. Anyway, Terry says for $5, thank you for answering my question. You bet, Terry. All right. Is that it?
I do have just one quick question.
Okay.
If you don't mind. Okay, cool,
Sure.
cool. So just something, just kind of a little bit vague, but so I know St. Justin the Martyr talks about like there being seeds of goodness and truth, even like, in the heathen religions. So I just kind of want to like understand like what are like maybe like the limits of that, So I mean, there's like a few things like we see like parallel like in human history, like with the Greeks, as like the gospel was sort of like a salute the Greeks, with the comparison to Logos and St. Paul, saying that basically the one that they acknowledges the God that that he worships. So I just kind of want to know like the limits of that because
Right. So you're talking. So hold on. Can you hold your second question? Let me answer that part first. So you're talking about the logos spermatikos, which is the idea that the whole world really is a theophanic manifestation ultimately. And so it's, rather than thinking of it like a bunch of different religions with truths that are kind of competing, the Christian metaphysic is that all of reality is manifesting the Logos, the second person of the Godhead, and that the Logos, I mean, if we interpreted reality correctly, that's what we would see. We would see reality as Christological. But we don't see that, not because of any fault in the evidence or in nature, but the fault is in us through the fall. So we have a darkened nous. Our noetic faculty does not interpret reality correctly, and that's why we have to repent. So repentance and the experience of the church is what reorients our faculties so that we interpret reality correctly. Therefore, the idea of the logos spermatikos, which is it's not so much that there's truth in the other false religion, it's that there's truth everywhere in nature, because all of reality, being itself, manifests the logos. So a guy who grew up as a Buddhist, it's the truth that's there in spite of the Buddhism. It's not true because Buddhism's true. It's not the Hindu that's true. It's truths that are there mixed with a bunch of error in spite of the error, you see. That's the right way to view it. And even Justin Martyr, when he talks about the logos spermatikos, he says that it's the logi of the logos, right? He's not talking about a generic, immaterial, unknown thing like Marcus Aurelius. He's talking about Jesus, okay? John 1 tells us the logos is Jesus. So it's a personal revelation of the second person of the Godhead. It's not an abstract immaterial force where Marcus Aurelius is talking about the exact same thing as John 1. No, they're not. Marcus Aurelius is talking about a immaterial, invariant, abstract force that's exemplified in the pagan Roman Empire. John 1 is talking about the second person of the Godhead, who's a theophanic manifestation in all of reality because he created it. Two different things. Same word, two different things. Okay, so we don't fall into word concept fallacy. Anyway, is that helpful in understanding in what sense there's truth in another religion? Because it's not truth in the other religion, it's truth in nature and in man himself, despite of the false systems that they're under.
Got it. Yeah, like kind of like how the Magi were able to find, look to the stars to find Christ. So, but yeah, well articulated. Thank you. But yeah, I had like one other question. I guess it's like kind of on like your opinion. So like, do you have an opinion on, for example, like when the Bhagavad Gita was created? Because a lot of people think that perhaps either like the gospel influenced some of the parts of the Bhagavad Gita, especially like parts where it associates like Krishna with like the absolute truth. And then there's some other people like, I've heard like people on the other side say that, oh, well, it's the other way around, which I don't think would even disprove Christianity in the first place. But I basically, my question is, do you think that perhaps if you have an opinion,
no,
perhaps Christianity,
I don't know.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, honestly, I don't know.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, and I have heard people talking about, the different texts that seem to, there's that guy that I critiqued his video, and he was later on in that video, he says, oh, look, this actually explains where Jesus was for all of his lost years. And now I don't know the dating of that text, so I don't know if that's, they're going to say that's an ancient text, or if that's a text that Hindu sages wrote 500 years ago. I don't know. I don't have any opinion on that. But I don't think that the way that I'm going to refute or go about presuppositional critique of Hindu thought is their metaphysics and their epistemology. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's not an interesting question. I don't know about it. But for my purposes, it could be useful, I guess. But, I mean, all I'm going to do when I critique that worldview is the same critique I do for everybody on ethics, metaphysics, epistemology. So that easy. If I were to debate a Hindu guy, I would say.
Understood. Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, man.
And have a good evening. Thank you.
All right. You too. All right, cool. Thank you guys. A lot of fun tonight. We didn't get, but we never do. Like, so you know, we think, oh, we're gonna bring some atheists, and then it's okay. I mean, I'm happy with tonight's conversations. Were great. They were good questions, and it's okay because I get to keep my $100 Ethereum expense token, debate token. I may just send it to that cow. Actually, tonight's winner of everything ends up being that cow. I think he wins. So.